Chapter 6, 1952 to 1966, the band program gains national prominence. Clarence Sawhill leaves USC for UCLA. David Baskerville becomes Associate Director of Concert Band. The university hired Clarence Sawhill as Director of Bands in 1952. Robert Fleury joined him as Assistant Director. Under Sawhill's direction, the band received national exposure as UCLA's football team won its first national championship in 1954. It toured Europe in 1961, and the varsity band supported the Bruin basketball team as it won an unprecedented 10 NCAA basketball championships under coach John Wooden. Sawhill, along with Kelly James, transformed the band into an organization that received international admiration. Though Sawhill had achieved success in building USC's band program, the university inadequately committed to the music program, which experienced lackluster facilities and a lack of funds. Sawhill had long desired to build a program such as that of the University of Illinois, which emphasized music education. In 1952, John Vincent, chair of the music department at UCLA and an old acquaintance of Sawhill's, contacted Sawhill about joining the department as the director of bands at UCLA. Vincent's vision was to create a band program at UCLA modeled on Midwest programs, such as the one Sawhill had realized while at the University of Illinois. Sawhill felt the move to UCLA would be a proper fit, given the university was rapidly growing in the 1950s, and he would finally have satisfactory facilities in which to work, with UCLA's plans to construct a music building. Regarding his acceptance of the position, Sawhill stated in an interview with Pat Rooney, "I told John Vincent if I took this job, it would be my last move." The band's 20th annual awards banquet, held in May 1972, stated the following about Sawhill: "It would be impossible to separate Clarence Sawhill, the man, from either his profession or his faith, for they are a basic whole. He accepts the challenge of teaching as a mission, respects the dignity of his specialized field of work, and believes that what his students and he can accomplish together will add to the betterment of humanity." Clarence Sawhill was born in Holton, Kansas in 1906, following a long family line of ministers, teachers, and farmers who had a profound respect for music. Musical training began at an early age, his first instrument being the violin, which he later played in the high school orchestra. Doubling on trombone and baritone horn, he also participated in the high school and community bands. During this period, he was fortunate to have as a high school music teacher a man named Roy Underwood, who was, without exception, the most influential teacher of his life in establishing the fine points of musicianship. The choice of Bethany College, Lindsborg, Kansas, for an undergraduate degree was a most rewarding one, for here there were dedicated professors who had been transported from Sweden to develop the arts in the Swedish Lutheran colony. These teachers worked with an old-world diligence, unaffected by the scurry of campus life, and unrelenting in their efforts to train students to search for authenticity, to endure the rigors of musical discipline, and to perform with integrity. Mr. Sawhill received a Bachelor of Music degree from this college in 1929, and it was at Bethany, 24 years later, that he was granted an honorary Doctor of Music degree, which on presentation was referred to as an earned degree, based on the years of successful teaching and a career that had reflected his credit on his alma mater. Before coming to UCLA, Mr. Sawhill's teaching experience included 8 years in the public schools in Kansas, 10 years at the University of Illinois, and 5 years at the University of Southern California, with numerous summers at the National Music Camp at Interlochen, Michigan, working with Dr. Joseph E. Matty. At the University of Illinois, he was an assistant conductor of bands, working under the renowned A. Harding, the Dean of American Bandmasters, who was a close friend of John Philip Sousa. It was here that Mr. Sawhill learned the craftsmanship involved in the interpretation of a Sousa march, in traditional band protocol, and correct procedures for military and ceremonial occasions. These also were the golden years for bands, as they progressed into full symphonic concert bands, or symphonic wind ensembles, as the term is used today. Mr. Sawhill was an indefatigable worker, and although he carried a full teaching load, he was able to complete the requirements for a Master of Music degree from the University of Illinois in 1942. Sawhill served as a guest conductor at music festivals, as clinician, contest adjudicator, lecturer, specialist in summer workshops and camps, and on invitation has submitted his expertise to schools with problems in their music departments. These assignments and related activities have taken him into 50 states, 13 European countries, Canada, Mexico, Japan, the Philippines, and Guam. His university football bands have performed in 10 Pacific Coast and Big Ten stadiums, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, and Paris, Lucerne, Vienna, Munich, Copenhagen, and Aalborg, Denmark. In 1965, on the invitation of the Japanese Band Directors Association, he conducted Japanese bands on a 2-week tour. In addition to these professional activities, he has served a term as president of the College Band Directors National Association and has been an active member of the American Bandmasters Association, the International Society of Music Educators, and numerous other professional organizations. Mr. Sawhill had a fierce loyalty to students and a remarkable quality of tolerance for the young composer, arranger, or performer. He firmly believed that students have the right to be musically heard on their campus, and that, in turn, they should sincerely strive for a professional caliber of performance. For example, he has constantly worked for a refined sound in the band, whether the performance is in the concert hall, on the football field, or in the classroom workshop. Many of his pupils are now successful teachers, and former band members are playing in symphony orchestras, service bands, and various studio positions connected with the cinema, television, radio, and recordings. Several of his former students are productive composers for the school music field. Sawhill was joined by assistant director David Baskerville in 1953, who had previously worked as an arranger for NBC, trombonist for the Los Angeles Philharmonic and Seattle Symphony, and director of Westlake College of Music in Hollywood. As the Daily Bruin pointed out, the marching band became an all-male group under Sawhill's direction. 1954 Rose Bowl. By the time UCLA's football team met the Michigan State Spartans, led by renowned coach Biggie Munn in the 1954 Rose Bowl, the band had already devoted a month's worth of rehearsals to its halftime show. Clarence Sawhill told Gene Hoffman in the December 31, 1953 Los Angeles Times, "Our band has been practicing 3 days a week since December 1st, putting in 4 hours on each of our 7 halftime formations. We are delighted to have finally made the Rose Bowl." The Daily Bruin recorded that the Bruin Band, 120 members strong, was the first Rose Bowl band ever to be as large as a Big Ten band. Impressed by the band's showing at the Rose Bowl, Dr. Roy Underwood invited Sawhill to teach at Michigan State University during its summer session. Reflecting on his time at UCLA, Sawhill stated in 1954, "I think we have our best group. I have an excellent staff to work with. We think of our band as a whole, not as individuals. It takes every member to make a good group." Through multiple rigorous rehearsals, Sawhill had prepared the band as well as possible for its televised appearance on New Year's Day. The Rose Bowl enabled a comparison of Big Ten and Pacific Coast Conference bands, and it became readily evident if the Pacific Coast Conference band was not of the caliber of a Big Ten band. For instance, when the Cal and Ohio State bands met at the 1950 Rose Bowl, the Cal band noted, "It became painfully obvious that the two bands did not belong on the same field." The Cal band's performance at the 1950 Rose Bowl led University President Robert Gordon Sproul to comment, "That band smells," and the performance ultimately resulted in the resignation of the Cal band's director, Charles C. Cushing. Prior to the 1954 Rose Bowl, Sawhill reasoned, maybe in the past, Big Ten bands made West Coast aggregations look like 4-piece string ensembles, but no more. One reason for their strength, and it's nothing for 250 students to turn out for the band in spring practice, is that in the Midwest, ROTC credit is given for being in the band. That's not true here. But in 2 years we've jumped from a turnout of 66 men to the 120 we'll field tomorrow. The Michigan State Band planned a Visit to California show which featured field formations such as Bugs Bunny and a moving trolley. The UCLA band's show included Rhapsody in Blue and Strike Up the Band, Parade of the Wooden Soldiers, Hooray for Hollywood, Pilgrim's Chorus, and a New Year's Bells finale with the tunes of Cathedral Chimes, Great Day, and Auld Lang Syne. UCLA's rally committee presented a card stunt featuring 3,256 students, which made it the largest in Rose Bowl history up to that point. Sawhill quipped to the press, "Coach Red Sanders is drooling with envy. We can play freshmen, have a 215-pound tuba player, and a drummer who rolls off downbeats instead of getting beat on first downs. Kelly James hired as associate director. Born in Miami, Florida in 1927, Freeman Kelly James spent most of his life on the West Coast, growing up in San Bernardino. Initially, Kelly desired to become an electrical engineer, but abandoned this plan in order to join the military. During World War II, he was promoted from field soldier to division band officer, and after the war, James played percussion in the University of California Marching Band beginning in 1949. He then went on to earn his BA in music from the University of California, earned his master's from UCLA, and also attended Oregon State College. After graduating from Berkeley, James became the director of bands at San Bernardino Valley College for 2 years, before joining Clarence Sawhill as associate director of bands at UCLA in 1954. Kelly's main duties as associate director involved directing the ROTC band and varsity band, arranging music, writing drill, and providing marching instruction. James, or Old Kel as some students called him in the 1950s, worked closely with Sawhill as the two often shared responsibilities. "Kelly and I always worked together on all of the bands," Sawhill explained. "We didn't think much about who was the director. We always kind of felt like it should be all of us together." While at UCLA, Kelly arranged over 1,000 pieces for band, including the signature tunes Sons of Westwood and Hail to the Hills of Westwood. Kelly remained with the band until suffering a stroke in 1980 during the UCLA at Cal football game. Alumni recall Kelly James and Clarence Sawhill. Drum major Kim Strutt related his memories of Clarence Sawhill and Kelly James. "Clarence was a consummate professional who was a tremendous encouragement to us, but also a model. I don't recall anything other than graciousness. He was really a mentor for all of us." Strutt particularly commented on James's ability to arrange music for the band. "Kelly was a terrific arranger and just did some marvelous things with the music. I certainly admired Kelly's gift as an arranger, and he did some wonderful things for us and the band." Commenting on Clarence Sawhill, Richard Key recalled, "Sawhill was a very dynamic guy, very dynamic. And worked hard. I mean, you'd swear he was going to collapse out there. You had to admire him. And you worked hard for him." Bill Peterson noted Sawhill's ability to teach, stating, "Clarence Sawhill was a warm, wonderful man who knew how to organize a band and how to get a band to play and march and do it all at the same time. Amazing. I think Dr. Sawhill was one of the best people I ever met. I could see Dr. Sawhill was an unusual person, unusual in that he was born to be a teacher. Sawhill always saw to it that he had picked out exactly where he knew there would have to be work done on an arrangement of a composition, but he could also, with some unerring skill, get through to those of the students who were going to be music teachers, what to look for, how to help players, what to do. He understood about life, about real life. He always found a way to guide people and help them to get back on the right path. And he was just a great guy to be around." Stan Antronikian remembered Kelly James as a really great guy. Antronikian explained, "The thing I remember, he encouraged you to play if you felt down on something. And even after the next year when I wasn't in the band, he'd see me, he still knew who I was. I mean, out of 100 guys, he still knew me. That was amazing." 1950s tours and shows. In May 1953, the Symphonic Band toured local high schools, the San Diego Naval Air Station, and the Corona Military Hospital. Dick Stein stated, "The tour was part of a public relations program for the university. It was designed to encourage high school music programs." In the fall, Sawhill sought to increase the size of the band from 85 members to over 100 in his first year as director. The resulting ensemble, which Sawhill declared as being the largest Bruin band since the end of World War II, had 104 members. In November 1953, the band performed a Thanksgiving-themed show. In its final performance before the 1954 Rose Bowl, the band formed a turkey while performing Turkey in the Straw, and performed a medley of Thanksgiving songs as the group formed a turkey on a dinner platter. Following the formation of A Pilgrim's Hat, which featured the university chorus singing America the Beautiful and Battle Hymn of the Republic, the band formed its script UCLA formation while playing Strike Up the Band. The band returned to the Corona Military Hospital in May 1954, where it received an outstanding reception. Commanding Officer Julian Love thanked the band for its performance, stating, Sawhill certainly has a wonderful group of talented musicians in the UCLA Bruin Band, and under his excellent leadership they will continue to warm the hearts of our people, both young and old. On behalf of the patients and staff of this hospital, it is my pleasure to thank him for this gracious appearance. We wish him and his fine band continued success in the years to come. 1954 Travel to Cal Game. The band traveled by air to the UCLA at Cal Game on October 30, 1954. This was the All-California weekend that at halftime featured the bands from UCLA, Cal, Davis, and Santa Barbara. Before the game, the combined bands played a concert at the Greek Theater on the Cal campus. The UCLA band performed its traditional pre-game show that featured maneuvers such as minstrel turns, cartwheel spinners, and diagonal flanks. At halftime, they combined with the other three bands to perform elaborate formations, including a telescope looking at the moon, a fishing pole reeling in a fish, and the words "Welcome" and a cursive "California." Following the game, the band traveled to Union Square in downtown San Francisco for a 1:30 a.m. rally. 1954 Peter Barrett's Christmas Carols. Prior to performing in the 1954 Rose Bowl, tuba player Peter Barrett decided to spread his own holiday cheer late one night. Peter recounted the following story. It was December. Red Sanders, the legendary UCLA football coach, had led his team to the Rose Bowl once again, and in just a few days the team and the marching band would both perform before a national audience. Both groups spent the Christmas vacation practicing their art. But tonight, the campus was quiet. The student body had returned home and the football players were sleeping. But I was studying biochemistry in my dorm room. Campus Hall, my dormitory, was located next to the campus, and it was empty except for me. A final marching band practice was scheduled for the next day when I would be free to drive home to spend Christmas with my family. It was 2 a.m., cold and foggy outside my third-floor room, and I was lonely and feeling sorry for myself. After all, it was Christmas vacation, but here I was, studying biochemistry in the wee hours of the night. That is not the way Christmas should be. And then I had an idea. Ordinarily, the tuba I played in the marching band was kept in the music building, but because the campus was closed for vacation, I stored it in my room. Light from my desk lamp gleamed on it in the corner, and as I looked at it, an energy from it seemed to prompt me into action. After all, what better way to enjoy the holiday season than to sing or play Christmas carols? At the end of my hall, a balcony overlooked the street. 3 floors below, and the UCLA campus loomed beyond. My tuba and I barely fit on the narrow balcony. I lifted the 45-pound instrument onto my shoulders, warmed the mouthpiece, and began to play Jingle Bells loudly. Thereafter, I played a rousing version of Joy to the World, and finished up with a gentle, Silent Night. Just as the final notes of the carol drifted across the campus, I heard sirens in the distance, and I could hear a few people in nearby buildings expressing their opinions about my Christmas performance. The sirens came closer, and then it became clear that they were headed toward my dormitory. I knew that I was their target. Perhaps the police would go away if they could not find me, but where could I hide, along with a very large shiny tuba? With a flash of genius, the thought came to me. I retreated to the other end of the dormitory corridor, where there was a large shower room, and I also opened the nearby fire escape door to let in the cold night air. In the shower room, I turned on the hot water for about 10 showers. The experiment worked. The cold air turned the shower room into a steam bath, and I could not see my own feet as I made my way to the back of the room. No one could ever find me or a tuba now. Then I heard heavy feet in the hallway, and a gruff voice said, "Is anyone in there?" "Yes, just taking a shower." "Come on out here in the hallway," the policeman said. And so I did, with difficulty, because I couldn't see very well. The 2 policemen appeared surprised to see me emerge from the shower room fully clothed, carrying a tuba. "I was practicing for the Rose Bowl," I explained. The policeman tried to appear stern, but could not prevent a smile as he said, "Do you always shower with your tuba?" I told him I did not, but was simply trying to practice. Then the police said, quote, "We hope UCLA wins the Rose Bowl game, but don't practice anymore tonight. Merry Christmas." And the next week, I marched 9 miles with my tuba in the Rose Parade and performed at halftime in the Rose Bowl. In 2017, the following profile of Dr. Peter Barrett was featured in the band's summer newsletter. Clarence Sawhill is the legendary creator of the UCLA band as we know it today. My personal claim to fame is simply that Mr. Sawhill and I arrived at UCLA on the same day in September 1952. I began playing my father's Holton cornet in the 6th grade, mostly because it was in the closet, and because my father had used it in the Harvard University band in the 1920s. After graduating from Glendale High School, I entered UCLA as a biology major, with plans to become a physician. All men were required to participate in the ROTC in 1952, and the grapevine convinced me that life in the Corps was better as a member of the band. My classes began on a Tuesday in the first week of school, and on that afternoon I began playing my cornet in the ROTC band. Within minutes, a short, energetic, middle-aged man appeared and watched us perform. He introduced himself as Clarence Sawhill, the newly appointed director of UCLA bands. It was his first day, too. He asked me if I enjoyed playing the cornet or trumpet, and I told him that I was having trouble because of my braces. At that point, he told me that he had just taken over the UCLA band and wanted to enlarge it. Would I like to join? As a pre-med major, I was serious about my studies, but he was very persuasive and described plans for an exciting trip to Berkeley. He also asked me if I would consider playing the bass, since his trumpet section was large enough, and this instrument would be easier to play with my braces. I had no idea what a bass might be, but I learned later in the day when I visited the music building. There, in a worn-out World War II barracks, Mr. Sawhill showed me the E-flat sousaphone he wanted me to play. I had no knowledge of the bass clef, but he assured me that if I simply transposed down 3 half steps and pretended that it was treble clef music, the correct tones would come out. He was right, but transposing all my music 3 half steps was not easy. The first marching band practice was on Thursday. I had never marched in a band before, and never played the sousaphone before, but I learned. And then it was Saturday, and a bus delivered us to the Coliseum Tunnel on the USC campus. We were playing Tennessee, the team that was expected to be the best in the country that year. The drum major's whistle blew, and I found myself leading half of the band through the tunnel and out onto the playing field where we were cheered by 20,000 people. Surely they were all cheering for me. And we won the game. It was terribly exciting. Rhett Sanders is one of the UCLA coaching legends, and he worked his magic during the years that I was at UCLA. During my UCLA years from 1952 to 1956, the UCLA band marched proudly down Colorado Avenue in the Rose Parade in 2 out of my 4 years. All through my 4 years at UCLA, Mr. Sawhill worked hard to bring the band up to his standards. He reminded us to keep our marching lines sharp and worked on our style. Lift those feet, hold your heads high and be proud. During practice, if a portion of the marching formation was not performing well, he would race down the steps of the conducting stand and run across the field to explain what was needed. Because of my personal pre-med perspective, I worried about him each time he did this, but he never fell. And though he was puffing a bit when he returned to the conducting stand, he would get us started again with great enthusiasm. Each of us felt we needed to work a little harder when we saw how important it was to him. Kelly James was a graduate student when I joined the band as a freshman, but soon thereafter he became Mr. Sawhill's right hand. I got to know him well during my years as a band member, and in later years as a spectator and faculty member when I attended basketball and football games. During my first years at UCLA, home basketball games were played in the men's gymnasium that only accommodated a few hundred people. Kelly led the basketball band that consisted of about a dozen students and later became known as the Varsity Band. As such, we made several trips to Berkeley and Stanford. Half of the fun of these trips was getting there. No funds were available for our transportation, but Kelly was very creative. Traveling in several cars, we made our way north with stops in towns to play short concerts. In return, sponsoring groups would feed and sometimes house us. During my final 1 or 2 years in the band, we moved out of the World War II wooden barracks on the north side of campus and into Schoenberg Hall. It was a beautiful place to play, and the concert band thrived under Mr. Sawhill's direction. One of his favorite pieces was Mussorgsky's Pictures at an exhibition. To this day, I have flashbacks and anxiety attacks when I hear that piece performed. I listen for the long run of 30-second notes played by the tuba in the Great Gate of Kiev section, a run which ends abruptly. Very abruptly, and if you are 1 note late, you are hanging out there all alone. In later years, I have enjoyed participating in the band alumni reunions at football games and watched Gordon Henderson in action. Mr. Sawhill would be proud of today's band and its leadership. And I know he would forgive me if one of the 30-second notes I played in the Great Gate of Kiev was late. 1954 National Champions in Football. Richard Keegi recalled his time in the band in 1954 as the Bruins finished the season undefeated, but were ineligible for the 1955 Rose Bowl per Pacific Coast Conference regulations, prohibiting consecutive appearances. Traditionally, the band played Happy Days after the team scored a touchdown, but at the Stanford game, which UCLA won 72-0, it changed its repertoire. Keegi noted, "We got up to about 56-0, and we decided Happy Days got old after a while, so we said, well, what we'll do is we'll play the Happy Wanderer. We played that after the touchdown. Then the next touchdown came along, and we said, now what are we going to play? Well, we'll play the High and the Mighty. So we changed our repertoire for that game. We won all the games that year and beat SC pretty good too. But it was a lot of fun, and the camaraderie and everything was terrific." The band's complex performance at Stanford in October 1955 provides a noteworthy example of the precision style of marching that the band had developed under the direction of Sawhill. The Daily Bruin noted, "The band has incorporated into its routine such maneuvers as minstrel spinners, kicks to the rear, and diagonal flankers. Under Sawhill, the band created more intricate maneuvers and devoted more rehearsal time to refining its formations." Calling its show Panorama of Sight and Sound, the band first formed a double company front and then moved to a staggered arrow wedge formation while playing Sing UCLA. The band then assembled into another company front while playing Strike Up the Band for UCLA. After forming an S, in which the ensemble paid tribute to Stanford, the band formed a mirrored minstrel line before forming UCLA, while playing I Love You California and Bye. Under Sawhill, the band performed drill and squad-based formations. Elaborating on the concept, the Daily Bruin explained in 1967, "Each member of the band belongs to one of the 40 groups of 4 which are labeled on a master chart of the show. Each group is an individual unit with its own directions of the show. Over 160 copies of the charts are made so that each uniformed bandsman and flag carrier knows exactly where he'll be during the show, and what music goes with which marching maneuver." Trumpet player Bill Peterson explained, "This was all very intricate. We marched in groups of 4, and the groups of 4 were designed so that one guy knew exactly where to go and when to go and where to go. The groups of 4 were organized in the marching band so that everybody was in a group that stuck together as it changed from one formation to another." 1956, the tunnel formation. Throughout the mid-1950s, the band continued to innovate its marching formations. In 1956, the band formed a tunnel through which the football team ran. Although the formation is now regularly performed in stadiums across the country, the maneuver was cutting edge at the time. Chuck Fenton of the Daily Bruin stated, "UCLA has a terrific band directed by Clarence Sawhill. They have become one of the top marching bands in the country. Our band innovated lining up in 2 lines at the Coliseum while the team runs between them to the Bruin bench." Kim Strutt noted the band's relationship with the football team and student body, stating, quote, "At that time, the band sat right behind the football team down on the field, and so we had a close proximity to the team. I also knew a bunch of members on the team, and so did other members. So the band was well integrated into the student environment of UCLA, and subsequently had a lot of support, and I think that was tremendous support not only to our morale." 1956 Sports Illustrated magazine cover. Featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine on November 26, 1956, the band remains one of the few college marching bands in the country to grace the cover. The issue featured a photograph of the group marching in its bright yellow and dark blue uniforms. The cover featured Sports Illustrated's television's Game of the Week, the UCLA-USC game. The band becomes a global sensation. In the 1950s, the band began spotlighting international affairs in its halftime shows and significantly expanding its audience by means of its televised appearances. In 1956, the band secured exclusive rights to the theme from the NBC television series, Wide Wide World, hosted by Dave Garroway. The band's acquisition of this music symbolized its efforts to encompass local, national, and world events. The band made its first appearance on the show, which received an audience of an estimated 50 million viewers, prior to performing at the Rose Bowl on January 1, 1956. On April 28, 1957, The band appeared on the State of California episode of Wide Wide World before an estimated 28 million viewers. Garraway's program featured a card stunt sequence filmed on Spalding Field, as well as a sequence filmed at Jantz Steps, which highlighted the Bruin Band and Spring Sing finalists. The band also displayed its interest in highlighting international affairs and culture during its 1958 High School Band Day performance, in which the combined ensemble played Around the World and European sequence. The band spelled out different European cities in block letters across the field, including Oslo, Dover, Paris, and Rome, and composer Meredith Willson was present to conduct his own composition, 76 Trombones, from the 1957 musical, The Music Man. Kim Strutt recalled the event stating, "We played, quote, 76 trombones among other numbers, and it was a wonderful show. And Willson was so gracious and so easy to work with and so appreciative of all we did, and that was another special event for all of us." 1950s Stanford crowds. Kim Strutt remembered Stanford fans being particularly rowdy when the band traveled to Palo Alto in the late 1950s. Luckily, band members were prepared to foil any planned mischief. Stanford fans liked to wander off with pieces of our uniforms if they got half a chance, so we would close ranks and form a tight unit. The trombone players in the front row would take out their mouthpieces and put them in their right hands in case they needed to become physical. And as I remember, we moved fairly smoothly through the crowds. Strutt reflected on his travel experiences with the band by stating, "One of the things with traveling by bus and by train and by plane, one of the things that made traveling so easy was the relationship we all had, and we were all looking forward to the game we were going to." Hey, 1958, the band's new uniforms. After years of economic setbacks, the band outfitted its members with new uniforms in 1958. Originally, the band planned to purchase the uniforms in 1955, but lacked the necessary funds to do so. Though Assistant Director Kelly James lamented the delay in acquiring new uniforms for the band, he seemed optimistic that it would receive more money after the announcement of the formation of the Pacific 10 Conference, which occurred in 1959. "It took us 7 years. That's a long time to go without changing clothes. We depend almost entirely upon football revenue for our finances. I think things will be a lot better with this new conference. We're even talking about taking the band into the Midwest every other year." The band held a contest encouraging students to design its next set of uniforms, awarding $15 to the top 3 designers. In designing the uniforms, James stated, "I combined the best elements of the 3 uniforms I admired very much: the British Grenadier, the U.S. Marine Corps, and the leading man in the Viennese National Opera." The uniforms cost $9,600, with each uniform priced at $100. James borrowed the design for the shako from the Grenadiers and Her Majesty's Royal and Ceremonial Guard. The hat was made of black fur and featured a white chin strap and bill, while a golden plume adorned the right side of the shako. The jacket was a standard white military jacket and featured black piping on its reverse. A black belt wrapped around the front of the jacket where the coat featured gold buttons, and UCLA was written across the jacket's collar. The jacket's cuffs proudly featured the UCLA script, and the uniform pants were navy with gold and white stripes. The band unveiled its new uniforms at the Stanford game, where it performed a unique sunburst UCLA formation in which 2 circles with radiating rays collapsed to form a diagonal UCLA formation. 1958 Hollywood Rally to Palladium. As drum major from 1958 to 1960, Kim Strutt had the opportunity to lead a UCLA rally into Hollywood on foot, where mayhem broke out. Just before a USC game, some friends and I were sitting around and thought, "We need to have some sort of substantive spirit rally," Strutt recalled. So we got on the phone, started calling fraternities, sororities, and band guys, and got a few hundred of us and designated Hollywood and Vine as our meeting spot. We marched down Vine Street into Wallace's Music Center, then down Sunset into the Hollywood Palladium where Les Brown was playing. I hopped up on stage to the absolute horror of Les Brown, but he didn't show it, and they played Strike Up the Band, and we led cheers, and that was great fun. Despite the throng of UCLA fans taking over Hollywood, Strutt recalls the police being very supportive, though this was not the case for Hollywood commuters, as the rally effectively gridlocked traffic in the area. 1958, the Band Bowl. The band has a long history of organizing its own athletic teams and events. Drum major Kim Strutt explained, "One of the fun things that was a part of being in the band is we put together a football team, and either the first year or second year, the linemen of the band football team outweighed the line of the UCLA football team." In December 1958, members of the band played members of the USC band at USC's Boulevard Field in what was to be the first of several football matches between the two groups. Later called the Band Bowl, UCLA won the first 13 of these games. 1958, UCLA 35, USC 24. 1959, UCLA 19, USC 6. 1960-UCLA 36, USC 6. 1961, UCLA 36, USC 0. 1962, UCLA 19, USC 0. 1963, UCLA 22, USC 0. 1964, UCLA 52, USC 6. 1965, UCLA 22, USC 6. 1966, UCLA 16, USC 6. 1967, UCLA 28, USC 7. 1968, UCLA 34, USC 6. 1969, UCLA 50, USC 14. 1970, UCLA 52, USC 20. The band formed its own intramural basketball team as well, playing games against Berkeley, Stanford, Pasadena City College, and USC, in a tradition that lasted into the 1980s. 1959, the band removes clarinets, flutes, and piccolos. The band implemented a revolutionary change during the 1959 marching season. Sawhill, desiring a more resonant sound, adopted a modern instrumentation for the group by removing clarinets, flutes, and piccolos from the all-male marching ensemble. As a result, brass instruments now comprised 60% of the band's sound, while saxophones and percussion formed the remaining 40%. A newspaper article from 1959 magnified the melodrama with a headline announcing, "Modern UCLA Band Kicks Out Woodwinds." Explaining this shift in instrumentation, Sawhill explained, "I'm out to get more power on the field. I want more fullness of sound." Having such an innovative instrumentation warranted Sawhill to suppose, "I believe we'll be the only band in the U.S. with this kind of instrumentation." Although Sawhill might have initially received a slight amount of criticism for his decision to eliminate the presence of woodwinds from the band, there is no indication that spectators were upset with the new instrumentation. Raymond Dvorak, director of bands at the University of Wisconsin, wrote to Sawhill in December of 1959 after watching the UCLA band perform at the Coliseum. Affirming Sawhill had achieved his desire for more fullness of sound, Dvorak wrote, "The pickup of sound was excellent. The voices came through as if amplified. But what pleased me most was the rousing round of applause your band received a number of times during your halftime program in spite of the card section's antics." 1959, Carl Burnett, twirler extraordinaire, joins the band. Carl Burnett, one of the country's foremost twirlers at the time, joined the band in 1959. Prior to joining the band, Burnett received many awards for his twirling performance, and Kelly James described Burnett as the most imaginative and colorful twirler ever seen in the Coliseum. Although Carl did not begin twirling until he was in high school, by 1958 he had been crowned state champion and went on to become a two-time doubles twirling state champion. 1959, the revamped varsity band. In 1959, 5 years prior to the men's basketball team's first NCAA title, the Daily Bruin complained that, quote, "UCLA's spirit at basketball games leaves a great deal to be desired." Wizard Wooden had posted a 216-85 record over the course of 10 seasons by 1959, but the fans failed to display any support in cheering on the Bruins. According to the paper, the new-look varsity band was the only ensemble at basketball games exuding any energy. Led by Kelly James, the group was improvising, harmonizing, and generally providing spirit. In fact, the newspaper noted that at a game in the 1959 season, the band sounded, quote, "much better than Berkeley's Straw Hat Band." 1960, millions for defense, but not 1 cent for the Bruin band. In the fall of 1960, the band found itself caught in the middle of a heated financial dispute between the Associated Students and Wilbur Johns, UCLA's athletic director. On October 6th, the Daily Bruin published a story describing how Kim Strutt and Carl Burnett of the UCLA band approached the Student Legislative Convention, hoping to acquire funds to send 30 band members to Seattle for the upcoming game against the University of Washington on October 15th. The motivation for sending the band to Seattle was twofold. Not only would a victory in Seattle have meant a possible Rose Bowl berth, but Coach Bill Barnes hoped the band would be present to offset the hostile crowd noise of 60,000 excited Husky fans. After hearing proposals from Strutt and Burnett, the Student Legislative Convention agreed to cover half of the cost. However, Wilbur Johns refused to appropriate any of the remaining funds for the band, which needed $675 to embark on the 30-hour bus ride to Seattle. Much of the controversy stemmed from the fact that Johns had agreed to pay half the cost for the attendance of 600 Air Force cadets at the upcoming Air Force game in November, yet refused to provide the band any financial support for a trip to Washington. Johns, defending his decision, explained, "The athletic department wouldn't be able to explain an expenditure for sending the band to Washington if it was short money at the end of the year." Explaining the university's financial disbursement policy, the Daily Bruin noted, "The athletic department has full financial responsibility for sending the band on out-of-town trips. However, the department is required to approve these trips." The tab on local band appearances is picked up jointly by John's office and ASUCLA, with ASUCLA paying 30%. The Daily Bruin quipped, "Millions for defense, but not 1 cent for the Bruin band. Come on, Mr. Johns. You can find one budget or the other to dig up some money for these kids." Kelly James did not think a 30-hour bus ride to Seattle was feasible, noting band members would miss too many days of classes. ASUCLA remained relentless, however, asking Chancellor Murphy to investigate the athletic department with the allegation that, quote, "The policies of the athletic department do not represent the best interests of the student body." In October 1960, at the football game against North Carolina State, the band honored the 15th anniversary of the United Nations, paying tribute to the armed forces in a show entitled Precision in Rhythm. The following month at the Cal game, the band became the first marching band to perform Parade of the Charioteers from the 1959 epic film Ben-Hur. Finally, it honored UCLA's participants in the 1960 Summer Olympics, held in Rome, by playing March of the Olympians. The ceremony honored gold medalist Rafer Johnson, silver medalist C.K. Yang, and their coach Elvin Ducky Drake, along with United States wrestling coach Briggs Hunt. 1961 Drum Major Elections. Stan Antranikian recalled how the band held elections in order to select drum majors. They needed a new band major. And Sam Stella was a freshman, so they took a vote. There was an audition in front of band members. We were all assembled in the band room, taking a vote, and he got it. 1961, the band tours Europe. In 1961, the band was invited to perform at the American Independence Day celebration at Rebuild National Park in Aalborg, Denmark on July 4th, which sparked a 27-day tour of Europe. This sojourn abroad was a defining moment for the band program, both in terms of revitalizing student interest in joining the band and awarding it international prestige and acclaim. The locales which the band visited included England, France, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Denmark, and the ensemble that traveled to Europe consisted of 83 members selected from the marching, varsity, and concert bands. John Hayes, a freshman at the time of the Europe trip, recounted how the band was chosen to perform at Rebuild National Park. The American Independence Day celebration is an occasion where the Danish celebrate the American 4th of July, and there's usually an American representative there, usually a band from one of the colleges. There was a competition or a committee that picked a group of students that got to go because I remember they were waiting to hear whether we were selected, and they had notified us a year ahead of time, so. Throughout the fall of 1960, band members eagerly awaited their chance to travel abroad. Hayes commented on the excitement that filled the ensemble. "I know the people in the band were talking about it all year. I think that some of the members of the band stayed an extra year to time their graduation so they could go on that trip in particular." Hayes was one of the few freshmen on the trip and ended up securing a spot on the trip by pure luck. "I was a freshman in the band that year, and I don't think that there were going to be too many freshmen to go. and I think there ended up only being 4 of us," Hayes recounted. "It turned out that I was a freshman playing the baritone, and I got to go because a couple of trombone players could not. Sawhill wanted a full rank of trombones across the front, and a couple of the upper-class euphonium players were trombonists, so that's how I got to go on the trip." While representing the University of California abroad, the band believed in its duty to internationally foster harmony through the universal language of music. The band's press release declared, "It is a distinct honor for the UCLA band to have been chosen to represent the United States at this Danish Independence Day, and it is hoped that we may be able to enhance international goodwill between the countries of Europe and the United States." Each member of the band going on the trip was required to pay $300 in out-of-pocket expenses, with any additional expenses being financed from the proceeds of a benefit concert, which the band hosted in Royce Hall in May 1961. The concert featured performances by the band and special guests, including opera singer Dorothy Kirsten, baritones Howard Keel and Gordon McRae, pianist George Greeley, and renowned composer Alfred Newman. Lee Patterson served as the master of ceremonies for the night. Sawhill suggested that the concert selections would mimic the band's upcoming journey, serving as a preview concert. The audience will be taken on a musical travelogue symbolizing the band's itinerary through Europe. Tickets prices ranged from $2.50 to $5, with special donor seats available for $12.50. The band departed for London on June 14th. During a lengthy layover in New York, the band boarded buses for a brief tour of the city. After stopping in Iceland to refuel, the group arrived in London, where they remained from June 16 to 18, performing a concert at the Victoria Embankment Gardens on June 17th. The band's next stop was in Paris, where it played at Salle Pleyel on June 21st. The Paris concert featured Ouverture en Do, Charles S. Cattell, When Jesus Wept, William Schumann, Clair de Lune, Claude Debussy, Quintet en Ut, Claude Arieu, Sussex Psalm, Russell Howland, Canzon Septimi Toni No. 2. For brass choir, Giovanni Gabrieli, Fanfare et Allegro, Clifton Williams, Andalusian Fresco, Paul Durand, Mexican Rhapsody, Robert McBride, George Gershwin's Porgy and Bess featuring a solo by trombonist Paul Tanner, Suite of Old American Dances, Robert Russell Bennett, and Stars and Stripes Forever, Sousa. Sweet Train. Although Sawhill and James allowed the band 3 days at most stops on the tour, John Hayes remembered there being a distinct lack of free time at the beginning of the trip. This became a critical issue in Paris, prompting a band-wide discussion over the group's itinerary. "I remember we were at Napoleon's tomb in the Louvre, and we had a big meeting of the band because a lot of people didn't want to go to the buffet factory. And it was decided there that especially the woodwind players would all go to the buffet factory, and other people didn't have to go if they really didn't want to. So a little group of us got to go to the top of the Eiffel Tower that day. At that time, you couldn't get a cold drink anywhere in Europe. Soft drinks and everything were pretty much served warm. And at the top of the Eiffel Tower, they had all these ice-cold Cokes, and so we all went crazy up there. Since most of the European hotels in which the band stayed could not accommodate the entire group, it divided into 2 groups, one large and one small. The larger group consisted of Sawhill and the majority of the band, while the remaining members, including John Hayes, were in the smaller group. Usually, the smaller group stayed in the smaller or second-rate hotel. Hayes especially recollected the Parisian hotel in which the smaller group stayed, saying, "I know that in Paris there was a really nice hotel for the larger group, and then there was this one hotel that we got to stay in. None of the plumbing in the hotel worked at all, except for 1 floor and 1 bathroom. But it was a lot of fun. It was just kind of like, let's see what we get next." However, in Baden-Baden, Germany, being in the smaller group paid off for Hayes. Since we were the smaller group, Hayes explained, we got a resort. That kind of made it all up for the first 6 days, when we didn't have the best hotel. The band continued its tour through Europe, staying in Lucerne, Switzerland, June 24 to 25, and then traveled to Innsbruck and Vienna in Austria, June 26 to 29. The ensemble performed at Vienna's Konzerthaus on June 28. Following its stay in Vienna, the group traveled to Munich, performing at the America House on June 30th, and then journeyed to Hamburg on July 2nd. The band then took an overnight train to Vejle, Denmark, where it marched from the train station to the Lord Mayor's home, who, along with 40,000 other citizens of the city, welcomed the band. Hayes fondly recalled the occasion of meeting the Lord Mayor to be full of mirth. They came by and gave everybody in the band these little toasting glasses, and then they'd come by and refill them again. I know they kept toasting. We'd toast the United States, that we'd toast Denmark. And by the end of that celebration in there, I know both Kelly James and Mr. Sawhill tried to talk him into stopping because we had to play a concert after that. But no, he wanted to really welcome us, so we finished that and went down and played this concert. And the concert just seemed to get funnier as it progressed. While in Denmark, the band was scheduled to perform at a parade through the middle of the city. Despite a torrential rainstorm, crowds of people gathered to see the band. The band played in the rain, as scheduled, soaking their uniforms and music in the process. In fact, Hayes remembered that the uniforms were still wet the following day for the performance at Rebuild National Park. However, the rain was inconsequential compared to the sheer joy the band brought to the crowds. The people just loved it. I remember us thinking, we'll just go ahead and play this thing. And we were just astounded that they enjoyed it that much, but happy that they did. The band's performance at the American Independence Day celebration in Rebuild National Park was the highlight of the trip for many. Despite rain, thousands of people attended the festivities. Walt Disney spoke, and several groups in addition to the UCLA band performed, including a Danish Army band and the Dana College Choir from Nebraska. Following the 4th of July celebration at Rebuild, the band stayed in Copenhagen from July 5th to 7, performing at Tivoli Gardens in front of Walt Disney on July 5th. Walt Disney got his idea for Disneyland from Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen, and he was there for some celebration. He either came out and spoke to us or he waved, Hayes recalled. The band gave its last performance of the tour on July 9th in Nakskov, Denmark, where approximately 12,000 people watched the NATO concerts. The band departed for New York on July 10th and arrived back in Los Angeles on the following day. Hayes regretted not spending more time in New York that summer, as other band members had done. About half the band stayed in New York. I should have too. It was an opportunity to get off the plane there, and a lot of the students went to some shows and then got home the rest of the way on their own. The Daily Bruin reported that band members especially appreciated their time in Denmark, where they stayed with Danish families. This, quote, grassroots approach enabled them to enhance international goodwill between the two countries, as well as learn firsthand the customs of Denmark. In the end, the band's tour was a terrific success. Hild Weldinger, Austrian cultural advisor to the United States Information Service, wrote Chancellor Murphy expressing his praise for the Bruin Band. I want to tell you how much I enjoyed listening to this musical ensemble under the direction of Mr. Clarence Sawhill. I now know why all the big symphony orchestras of the America, which I was able to hear in Vienna, have such outstanding brass and woodwind sections. May I also tell you that I, as an Austrian citizen, wish we had such an outstanding university band as you have. Though your UCLA band is young in tradition, it is rich in musical skill. The American ambassador to Denmark, William McCormick Blair Jr., wrote to Chancellor Murphy offering his appreciation for the band's performance. It is a source of great satisfaction and pride to all of us here to have our country represented by so fine a musical and human relations conscious organization as your band proved to be. Vanette Lawler, Executive Secretary of the Music Educators National Conference, wrote a letter praising the Bruin Band's performance in Austria. The concert, which was given by the band under the excellent leadership of Clarence Sawhill, was an outstanding success and much appreciated by the hundreds of distinguished musicians who came to the meeting from 36 countries. Dr. E. Krause of the International Society for Music Education wrote, "We are sure that your European concert tour turned out to be an outstanding example for promoting international goodwill through the medium of music." In its 1962 Rose Bowl program, the band wrote, "It was a distinct honor for the UCLA band to represent the United States at the American Independence Day celebration in Rebuild National Park in Denmark, and we hope that we contributed to a better understanding between the countries of Europe visited and the United States." Band alumnus profile Ron Logan from the 2011 Band Newsletter. Ron Logan joined the UCLA band as a freshman trumpet player in 1956. Ron and famed studio French horn player David Duke both were on band staff as uniform managers when the UCLA band first wore their famous Beefeater uniforms. Ron played in the basketball band and was a member of the band that traveled to Europe during the summer of 1961. actually leading a breakout jazz band that played for King Frederick of Denmark. Walt Disney was a special guest of the king that night. Ron began his 27-year career with the Walt Disney Company in 1960, when he was asked to lead the fanfare trumpets that played for the daily award ceremonies with the U.S. Marine Band at the Squaw Valley Winter Olympics in California. Following his graduation from UCLA with bachelor's and master's degrees in music and music education, Ron served as director of bands at James Monroe High School in Sepulveda, California for 3.5 years, and as director of bands and jazz studies at Long Beach City College for 12 years, until 1978, when he joined the Walt Disney Company full-time, first as music director at Walt Disney World in Florida conducting the Walt Disney World Marching Band, and eventually as executive vice president and executive producer of Walt Disney Entertainment Worldwide. Ron was responsible for creating, casting, and producing all live entertainment products for the Walt Disney Company, including the Disneyland Resort, Walt Disney World Resort, Tokyo Disneyland Resort, Disneyland Resort Paris, the Disney Institute, Disney Business Productions, Disney Cruise Line, Disney Entertainment Productions, and Walt Disney Entertainment Worldwide. He was also executive vice president of the Walt Disney Special Event Group, Disney Special Programs, Inc., and the founder and first president of Disney Theatrical Productions, which produced Disney's Beauty and the Beast, a new musical, on Broadway and around the world. Ron retired from Disney in 2001. In 2007, Logan was honored with the Disney Legends Award, which is presented to individuals who have made a significant impact on the Walt Disney Company. Ron was a founding member of the International Foundation for Jazz, a corporate advisory council established in support of jazz education. He serves on numerous advisory boards in support of the arts, including Dream Vision Entertainment, Orlando, Florida, and Animated Family Films, South Africa. Ron is executive vice president and executive producer of Entertainment Arts, a worldwide consulting company with current projects in Mobile, Alabama, South Africa, and Brazil. Ron also teaches theme park management and entertainment arts at the Rosen College of Hospitality Management, associate professor, University of Central Florida, and the Business of Show Business at Webster University in Orlando, Florida. From 1999 to 2002, Ron served as honorary chairman of the UCLA Clarence Sawhill Memorial Endowed Band Fund. In celebration of reaching the fundraising goal of $50,000, Ron was invited to conduct the UCLA Wind Ensemble in Royce Hall in May 2002 at the Clarence Sawhill Memorial Concert. 1961 Equipment Crew Mishap. Stan Antronikian, a member of the band's equipment crew, recalled how the band nearly lost a bass drum en route to UCLA from the Coliseum in November 1961. "We helped load the instruments and all the other equipment on this flatbed truck with racks on the side, and there was no seatbelt requirement at that time, and you could ride wherever you wanted to. So a couple of us would sit on top of the truck bed with the equipment, and the other two would be driving. We had packed up all the equipment at the Coliseum. We were getting ready to come back to UCLA. Then, along the 405 freeway, I don't know if we were driving too fast or not, but this big bass drum flew off the side and I hollered at the driver, 'Sandy, hey, stop, let's get that bass.' So we stopped. There wasn't traffic like there is nowadays. We pulled over, backed up, got it back up on our truck. Unfortunately, the head was cracked, and so we went back to the campus." 1961 Steve Allen Show. Prior to its performance in the 1962 Rose Bowl, the band appeared on the new Steve Allen Show, which was filmed on campus in December 1961. The show, which featured guest singers Frankie Avalon and Connie Francis, portrayed campus life at UCLA, with the UCLA football team, cheerleaders, and marching band making appearances. The 1961-62 UCLA yearbook describes the band's appearance this way: "With the same precision they used to enthrall UCLA football fans, the marching band proudly demonstrated their original arrangements for Allen and his television viewers. During the broadcast, Allen showed his musical prowess on a sousaphone. The band made an appearance performing fight songs on the program. Stan Antronikian, who was present for the occasion, recalled Steve Allen's friendly demeanor. The whole time he'd walk around whoever was near him. You know, he'd chat with anyone. He was very friendly." 1962 The Rose Bowl, UCLA versus Minnesota. The band's pregame show featured a fanfare, tribute to the University of Minnesota, UCLA formations, flag ceremonies, a combined band performance, and a trumpeters feature. As the band took the field in company fronts, it played Fanfare by Creston and The Young Lions before forming a rotating to the tune of Minnesota Rouser. The band then paid tribute to UCLA by forming its marquee UCLA formation to the tune of Strike Up the Band and forming its famous script UCLA formation while playing It's a Good Day and Hail to the Hills of Westwood. A flag ceremony followed the alma mater, which featured United States Air Force, Navy, and Army flags, and the tunes You're a Grand Old Flag and other service songs. The band performed To the Colors and This Is My Country during the flag salute, and the University of Minnesota joined the Bruin band for The Star-Spangled Banner. A special group of trumpeters then took the field, playing the Rose Bowl Fanfare and Sons of California. Announcer Russ Wiley announced the band's entrance at halftime. Ladies and gentlemen, the UCLA Marching Band, under the direction of Clarence Sawhill and Kelly James, with drum major Sam Stella and champion twirlers Dan Rowe and Carl Burnett, presents their halftime performance of Toyland. The band then performed British Grenadiers and Hail Britannia in a formation of 6 lines across the field, representing European toys. Forming a jack-in-the-box, the band performed How High the Moon while featuring its famed twirlers Dan Rowe and Carl Burnett. After silently forming 2 lines representing animated toys, the band portrayed an entrance of toys, playing March of the Toys and Parade of the Wooden Soldiers. The show ended with a performance of Toyland from the film Babes in Toyland. Spectators enthusiastically received the band's 1962 Rose Bowl performance. The Daily Bruin noted, "The Bruin Band's last Rose Bowl parade appearance, January 1, 1962, has generally been acclaimed as the finest bowl game band show in recent years." The band numbered 110 members for the bowl game, plus 16 high school students who performed in the Herald Trumpet Unit. Stan Antronikian recalled his Rose Bowl experience, stating, "They had us stay in the dorms. We had to be close by for over a week before because every morning we'd be out practicing. And it was break time on campus between Christmas and New Year's. During the Rose Parade, we would only rest long enough to take maybe 50, 100 steps, and then we'd start in again. I always remember going to the Rose Bowl, and before that we'd go to Disneyland and march over there. And then even in the Rose Bowl, the Disney people brought their characters over to the halftime performance. It's one of the best musical memories that I have of being in the band." Gary Thompson, a band member from 1960 to 1962, recalls Sawhill's ability to inspire. One notable band memory for Gary Thompson occurred during a disastrous rehearsal for an upcoming game. Things weren't going well at all. The music wasn't working, and neither were the drills. Everyone was frustrated, especially Kelly. "I think he was at his wit's end and really didn't know what to do," Thompson explained. To turn around the rehearsal, Sawhill addressed the band, giving an inspiring speech. Clarence was there and called us all around the podium. He encouraged us and gave us a real win one for the Gipper speech. He ended by saying that we needed to dedicate ourselves. And to show his dedication to us, he said, "Boys, I'd die for any one of you." Coming from anyone else, we would have probably laughed him off the field, but we knew that if Clarence said it, he meant it. We did a fine performance at the game on Saturday. 1962 compulsory ROTC suspended. On June 21, 1962, the University of California Regents voted to suspend mandatory ROTC enrollment on all University of California campuses, ending 96 years of mandatory training. Received with overwhelming student support, the vote transformed ROTC into a voluntary officer training program for upper division students. Up until that time, members of the band usually fulfilled their ROTC commitment by serving in the ROTC band, 1960s style. Throughout the 1960s, the band maintained its long-established precision style of marching. This was in sharp contrast to the performance style of ensembles such as the Stanford Band, which one UCLA student described as, quote, "a real hang-loose and rollicking bunch of guys." While some may have found the band to be too traditional, it maintained its identity despite the social and cultural changes of the period. Stan Antronikian recalled that the UCLA script formation habitually received the biggest crowd response. The band performed at the groundbreaking ceremonies for the Hollywood Motion Picture and Television Museum on October 20, 1963. The museum, which was to be built across from the Hollywood Bowl, rivaled the Smithsonian Institution in its proposed scope. Studio executive Jack L. Warner of Warner Brothers stated the event would be the largest turnout of stars and personalities from motion pictures, television, radio, recording, and civic life ever to assemble for an occasion related to the entertainment industry. In addition to the 6,000 fans present, celebrities including Gene Autry, Shirley Booth, Walt Disney, Karl Malden, Gregory Peck, Rosalind Russell, Jimmy Stewart, Lana Turner, and Jack Webb were on hand to witness the groundbreaking ceremony. However, the ambitious project was never completed, and after experiencing a lack of support and financial trouble, the city canceled the project by the fall of 1965. In September 1964, the band performed at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Jules Stein Eye Institute. Actress Bette Davis was present to speak. Famed composer Meredith Willson, who had conducted 76 trombones at the band's 1958 high school band day performance, conducted the band during a rehearsal on March 30, 1965. Willson was on campus for the dedication of the Meredith Willson Library, a collection including 500,000 pieces of sheet music and 25,000 phonographs donated to UCLA by the composer. Leading the band through tunes from his own musical The Music Man, Willson put UCLA bandleader Kelly James out of a job for 20 minutes. At the band's annual Band Day event in 1962 at the Ohio State game, renowned composer Henry Mancini conducted the combined bands in its Salute to Hollywood halftime show. The music for the show included 76 trombones, Mr. Lucky, Moon River, and an old-fashioned Hollywood patriotic finale. 3,000 musicians from 32 Southern California high schools participated in the show. As the United States increasingly committed ground forces to Vietnam in 1965, with American forces numbering 184,300 by December, war protests erupted across the nation. The band's flag routine at the 1966 Rose Bowl had a profound effect on David Kickworth, class of '64, who was serving in the Army at the time. I wish to express my pride in the Bruins for having a moment of silence for the men serving in Vietnam and the flag routine, presented by our great band during halftime at the Rose Bowl. Your demonstration will undoubtedly do much to restore the proud name of the university. Sons of Westwood dispute with Cal. The quarrel surrounding UCLA's fight song has been ongoing for decades. To this day, some UCLA fans maintain that UCLA stole the song from Berkeley, while others remain in denial about its origin. The debate started in 1959 when Kelly James, an alumnus of the Cal Band, wrote an arrangement of Big C for the Cal, UC Davis, UC Santa Barbara, and UCLA bands to perform in a combined halftime show at the school's annual All-University Weekend. Following this performance, the UCLA band adopted and routinely played James' arrangement of the song and embraced a new set of lyrics for the tune, calling the fight song Sons of Westwood. Upon hearing the news that UCLA had adopted the tune, James Berdal, director of the Cal Band, became infuriated and felt UCLA's arrangement was a violation of the sanctity of Cal songs. Feeling that James had brazenly robbed Cal of its own fight song, Berdal refused to drop the matter, resulting in an ongoing argument between Berdal and James in the following years. Legally, the key matter in the dispute focused on the copyright status of Big C. If the tune had not been copyrighted, then it remained in the public domain, meaning UCLA could legally adopt the song as its own. Inquiring about the song's copyright status, musicologist Irwin Coster contacted the Copyright Office of the Library of Congress on behalf of UCLA. The Copyright Office wrote back on February 18, 1969, informing Coster that Big C was indeed in the public domain and had never been copyrighted. Public domain status meant that while Big C itself could not be copyrighted, further arrangements of the song could receive copyright protection. Although the legal aspects of the matter had been settled, Berdal continued to fight UCLA's use of the song for the remainder of his time at Berkeley. In fact, 2 days after Coster received word from the Copyright Office, Berdal wrote James a sullen letter, warning him, "There can be no chance for any healthy relations between our student bodies, and particularly our bands, if this blatant appropriation without permission of a more than 50-year-old Berkeley song is allowed to go unchallenged." UCLA's storied athletic tradition and the band's nationally televised appearances have caused many to forget that the song originated in Berkeley, not Westwood. Nevertheless, UCLA has done much to make Sons of Westwood its own. UCLA's signature 8-clap has been a staple of the song, and UCLA's version ends with its signature slow ending, which is absent from any version of Big C. During the 1980s and 1990s, whenever the UCLA band and Cal band are at the same athletic event, the UCLA band would occasionally tag the ending of Cal's Big C by playing its slow ending of Sons of Westwood. 1966, the Rose Bowl, UCLA versus Michigan State. In the 1966 Rose Bowl, the number 5 Bruins once again met the number 1 Michigan State Spartans, who were undefeated entering the game. Despite losing to the Spartans in 1954 and 1956, and owning an 0-5 record in Rose Bowl games, the Bruins, led by quarterback Gary Beeben, were by no means going to let the past affect their desire for their first Rose Bowl win. The UCLA band numbered 152 plus 20 high school students who performed in the Herald Trumpet Unit. For the pregame show, the band performed Fanfare UCLA, Strike Up the Band, the Michigan State University fight song, Hail to the Hills of Westwood, To the Colors, This Is My Country, and the combined bands on the Star-Spangled Banner. For halftime, the show started with The Rose Bowl Fanfare by the Old Pacific, Team Hear Our Song, Sons of Westwood, That Was the Week That Was, and Stars and Stripes Forever. The game remained scoreless until the second quarter, when Beeben scored 2 touchdowns to put the Bruins ahead 14-0. The Bruins' defense shut out the Spartans until midway through the fourth quarter, when Michigan State scored a touchdown but failed to complete a pass on a 2-point conversion attempt. Down 14-6, the Spartans managed to tip a punt, which gave them favorable field position on the ensuing drive. With under a minute left on the game clock, the Spartans scored a touchdown from the Bruins' 1-yard line, putting the Spartans down 2 points. The Bruins, mindful of Kaiser's game-winning field goal in the 1956 Rose Bowl, vowed to stand their ground with the game on the line, as the Spartans attempted a 2-point conversion to tie the game. Despite giving up 204 yards on the ground, the Bruins were able to stop Spartan running back Bob Apisa on the play that mattered most, as UCLA hung on to defeat the Spartans 14-12, earning the Bruins their first Rose Bowl victory. Leland Green, supervisor of Pasadena City Schools, remarked, "I thought that the UCLA Bruin Band in the 1966 Tournament of Roses was the best UCLA band and the best university band that I have heard in the Tournament of Roses parade. The band sounded as if it were in concert on parade." 1966 ASUCLA's UniPrep and the band's first band camp. As UCLA switched to the quarter system in 1966, the UCLA band hosted a 4-day band prep program, part of ASUCLA's UniPrep orientation program. Though classes did not begin until the end of September, football schedules remained unchanged. As a result, the band now had little time to prepare for upcoming performances. Band prep alleviated these problems by introducing new and returning members to marching and music essentials with the help of members of UCLA's National Honorary Band Service Fraternity, Kappa Kappa Psi. Band camp is now an essential part of the band's preparation for the football season, typically beginning a week and a half before classes start.